levels of fashion, and there is like a level that is so label centric where it's just labels everywhere. My own need, and I'm just shouting that I need validation. As I've gotten older, I really value the story of a person, and so as opposed to just the story that they're projecting. That's like to mean like back in the day, the first time we ever used brands, it was on livestock and it was on cattle. Hello, and welcome to Bless Your Heart podcast. I'm your host, Laura Hartnett, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about money matters. So the question is money serving you, or are you serving your money? This is a very controversial subject because it's really tied to a lot of things. Like money is kind of a litmus test to reveal. The question is money serving you, or are you serving your money? Because, money is really tied to what people value, where they say, where your heart is, there your treasure will be. And sometimes I think that a lot of people, they measure their treasure as, financially, money-wise. And I like to kind of break it up into, how does money play a role in your life? So are you over here trying to chase money because of what? Like, what is it that it serves for you? And I think that that's been a question that I've always wrestled with. All growing up, I grew up, in an area where I got to experience a lot of things. And I didn't really understand at a young age that that was because of money. And it's funny too, because I think children, they kind of have this idea because parents, it's like, oh no, no was usually followed by, some excuse of financial matters, so if you've been raised that way where you were told no because that's too expensive, then naturally you're over here going, okay, the problem is money and I don't have enough of it. So I need to have an abundance of money, and that will give me, X, Y, and Z on whatever it is my wants are. And so sometimes we get confused because yes, absolutely, especially in, America and this society, we're over here trying to live, and it costs money in order to give you security. But I think it starts crossing a line for a lot of people into their identity, and that's where it can get dangerous. So really being able to differentiate between how this serves you. Is this giving you security, or is this giving you an identity? And if you're tying your money into your identity, then you're going to really struggle. You're going to struggle because not all the time is this going to, be in your control. Especially just like times like right now, like we're in the middle of a recession. And so, or during the pandemic, for me, outside circumstances like my divorce, that left me not only scrambling, my security was definitely thrown. I mean, in my divorce, I had received a phone call from my ex-husband that was just like, hey, don't bother using your money or your debit card or your credit card because you don't have access to it anymore. So, I mean, I was completely out of nowhere, just completely shut off. And that definitely put me in okay, I'm having to fill up my car with gas. I have no way of getting gas. I have to take care of my kids, So that definitely left me in a place of feeling like I lost that security. And so what it really did for me is kind of go, okay, that trauma that created in me was, I never want to experience that ever again. So, I always had growing up kind of an issue when it comes to money. Like I had this struggle, this battle with it. And how I approached it at the very beginning, because it seemed very complicated. And my parents, they did a great job at doing a lot of things. But one thing that was never discussed with me was how to financially manage your money. And so that was one thing that I decided that I really wanted to teach my children, was how to money manage. I did the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University, and I think like his whole, idea of it is really great. I really believe in his, live less now so that you can live, a lot better later whenever when you have the freedom, you don't have the running around screaming kids and everything like that. But I also think that, there's like certain levels of extremes that I wasn't really necessarily willing to do. So, when we first got married, because I never really managed money, I never had to deal with my own money. And that's a big regret, I think, that I do have. Like everyone talks about like, oh, no regrets and stuff like that. Well, you know what? There's learning things, and it's like, okay, I obviously can't go backwards. However, I do think that it's important for me to reflect on my past because I have children that I'm raising. So I can tell them, hey, based on what I experienced, this is probably not the best idea for you. So I would strongly encourage each one of my children to live on their own and experience their own way of handling money, learn from that, because the truth of the matter is if you really would have done a little bit, if I really would have known better, looking back, hindsight's 2020, but how mature I was with handling money was definitely an obvious sign of how I wasn't ready to make certain decisions for myself. I kind of had a little bit of a reckless abandonment of like, everything's going to be fine. I'm just going to dive in. As good as it is to have faith, God did give us a brain. And so I'm like, there's a little bit of a balance between absolutely have a wholehearted faith. And if you're called to do, just diving right in, then go for it. But to be completely honest and raw with myself, I many times used faith as a cover up for my lack of something lacking in me. And just went, you know what? I'm just gonna nope, you just gotta have faith. And you can't just shut down like that. And I think a lot of people shut down like that when it comes to money and goal setting and how to achieve what it is you want to achieve. And that was something that I finally, once I got brought to my awareness, I was like, wow, this is so interesting. And so, whenever I was first married and I was just deciding, you know what, we're going to have this traditional life. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and my dad was the worker and the breadwinner. And so we kind of modeled that. And so I went right into that. And so, but then, I had this understanding that he was going to be able to bring in a certain amount of money, him being 7 years older than me. And, and I had no idea that, he was very good at what he did and he was, very intelligent and he had, all the means to do so. But I didn't quite know any of the backstory of financial debt and student debt and what all of that was going to mean for our whole picture. And again, I'm looking at it going, oh my goodness, if I would have been advising me and my ex-husband as a couple, I would have been y'all are in no way near ready to get married. Y'all, you're completely clueless, Laura, as to what any of this actually means for you. And I was over here kind of had an idea, he was like, okay, this is great. We were living just high on the hog off credit cards all before marriage. And then it was like, okay, what are we going to do after? And he was like, well, we're going to cut back. And I'm like, yeah, sure, absolutely. Not realizing what that actually meant specifically. And so, financial stresses in marriages is definitely, mixed expectations and all these things. I wanted a certain level of security, and I was also very much tied to finances as my identity also. So I had to start learning how to be free of that. And I think that, many times people can make money their God. And I think that I was, somewhat doing that in a certain way because I really relied on money to give me the security that I believe that only God really can give you. So if you're relying too much on that as well, it's a fine line, between just chasing after that and chasing after that. Me opening up my salon during such a crazy time as the pandemic was, well, hello, Pixie. My dog's jumping on me. But me opening up my salon during such like a crazy time, it really allowed me to kind of be forced almost to completely just submit to faith, because it was like, there's no other way I can do this. Like, I am completely powerless here. And that was really an eye-opening experience that I had, and really a gift, even though it caused such trauma in some ways because I felt so helpless. It also really forced me to really lean on God and not lean so much on, money, and just kind of give him a chance to kind of come in and be the hero of the situation, which he definitely did. That was really when my faith was restored, because before that, I had kind of just decided, you know what, I'm doing this my own way. I've been trying to follow it God's way, of course, and that's what I kind of said I was doing. I think I was doing it to the best of my abilities, but I didn't really know. I was kind of almost, I think something that a lot of us do is I was kind of almost making like, okay, how can I make my way God's way? And I was almost saying, no, God, like, this is what you want for me, right? Like, you want me to live like this. You want me to go do this. Like, don't you want me to evangelize to the country club people? I mean, they need me too, right? Like, so you want me to be in living this lifestyle. Like, this is the lifestyle I grew up with. So surely I should continue that. Like, why would you put me there and then take me away from it? So when in reality, it was, no, that's not part of your identity. That isn't who you are. Who you are is A, B, C, D. And, I think that right now, what makes it even more difficult is, used to be, you would just come home from school or, from work or whatnot, and you would put on the TV and you would have, small moments of marketing. And I know that they said, like, you were hearing marketing everywhere, whether it be like at the grocery store, there were magazines and you were reading the front covers. But nowadays with social media and the amount of focus that people are diving into social media, like, the messages of consumerism that you're getting about your identity has just gone, I think, next level. And so, you used to wear brand names, brands back in the day, they first existed as a sign of ownership. And so it used to be that, farmers were branding cattle as a sign of ownership of who that belonged to. And then, sadly enough, it grew into slavery, where people were then being branded. And then now, it's still in a twisted way, still exists in that way. What people will do and succumb to be able to wear a brand. I remember in elementary school, and this was like towards the end of elementary school, maybe early middle school, there was a girl that would go around and she would look at the tags on the back of the girl's clothing. And I just remember thinking, that's outrageous, just to see what brand you were wearing, basically to size you up and to categorize you into really your value. And I think, like, whoever, looking from it, from a adult perspective, I'm like, wow, like, that is so twisted. And at such a young age, were we being taught what our value was based on what we could afford? So it was, our money is that what bought our value and bought our identity amongst society. And that could not be more untrue. I mean, that is such an all-American consumerist society way of looking at it. But yet that's not the truth. And so we have to really get a better handle on it. And I think that to have financial maturity, you have to really have a very strong sense of identity. And until then, you're going to be a slave to your money. So do you want that brand to show the ownership of your enslavement to something? I mean, if you can afford it, and that is something that is just like, okay, I can buy that, it's not going to change my life. But if you're having to just take away from so many different things and areas in your life, is that really serving you? Like, what is that brand giving you? And the thing that I also think is really interesting as well is, amongst these luxury brands, there are high-end parts of it and there are kind of, the lower-end parts of it. So if you look at the two categories within each of these brands, let's say like Gucci, for instance, or Louis Vuitton. Okay, let's go with Louis Vuitton. This is a more obvious one. So Louis Vuitton actually has two segments of their retail. So they have their high-end retail, which actually shows very, very little labeling on it, because if you are really wearing that, it's because you have been, you're old money, basically, where you have been accustomed to quality and you're buying it for its quality. You're not buying it because you don't need it. You already know who you are, and society already knows who you are. You don't have to prove anything. So that brand, that label showcasing everywhere isn't actually showing anything. But yet the lower end of that high-end brand has just the logo everywhere. And if you actually were to walk out into certain parts of society that are the higher end of society, they would actually look at that and they would categorize you. So if you're walking on another side of society that's a little bit, less fortunate in the financial world, they would actually look at that and be like, wow, and then you go into the higher end society and they look at that and go, so it's so crazy to me that you want to walk around wearing that and allowing people to distinguish your value in society based on that. And I'm not saying that wearing brands is a bad thing. I'm not necessarily saying that. If you really enjoy doing that, hey, it's your thing, go for it. But I'm saying, what are you really sacrificing and what are you really trying to accomplish by wearing that? Are you really trying to, work so hard? Like, how much time and effort does it take for you to buy that purse or to buy that item? And so you can wear it so that after hours of work, one person in society, two people, or maybe a few can have one small idea in their head that lasts for 0.5 milliseconds that says, wow, she's important. Why do you need that? Why is that so important to you? And really, who is, owning you because of that? So really, that's the mindset of this. And the reason why I bring it up is because I think whenever I was really young, and this is something that is just something that if I would have known better how I could have had my money serving me, then I could have not just served me, but also served my family. If I would have taken the money that I wanted to put in these other things before really learning what that money could have given me in other ways, I would have much rather, have put that in like a 529 college savings plan. I would have much rather put that in a college savings plan for my children. And so that now that I'm about to, send my kids off to college, I won't be so stressed out trying to figure out, and I can just really enjoy these last few months with them, going off to college. But instead, I was worried about, what random people in this world were thinking about me. And that's just not, as I'm going out and really solidifying my identity more and more, I'm releasing money as giving me identity. I haven't yet, released it from giving me security, because in that, I get some level of freedom, and that is definitely something that I still want. So I think that there's, whenever interviewing all these different people that are high in society and, the mega millionaires of life, whenever asking them about just when were their happiest times, I was watching this Netflix documentary, and they were talking about just these like mega billionaires and, when were they happiest? And it actually wasn't when they were at their richest. There was like this really sweet spot between having money and having enough security to where they had the freedom, but they didn't have all of the other problems that money could bring. So I thought that was really interesting. So there's not necessarily the goal is the more you have. And you hear that all the time, but I really wanted to dive into what does that really mean? And what then, and how much, and how should I, spend my money? What should I put my money in? How will it serve me best? So that's whenever I started really diving into this whole financial advising that I'm now embarking on and wanting to help families. And that's been my new mission now, is in my local community. I want to start hosting at our salon different classes for families it's not just going to be how to manage your money, but it's really the thoughts, that go into what are you holding on to that's not allowing you to put your money in a better place to give you really what you want, because we are so programmed by society to think, to keep us in a consumeristic way so that the economy just gets better and grows and grows and grows. But yet our hearts and depression are actually rising and anxieties are rising. And I don't think that that's, I think it's just kind of meant to be like that. How we're spending more money than we've ever spent in society, but yet our anxiety is way higher. So what does that really tell you about how money doesn't buy happiness? As they say, it buys you moments of pleasure, but happiness and pleasure are very different. So that's something that I just wanted to start helping with my community, and kind of learning about investments, and if you were to, and how to share with my children just better ways of investing their money. But also it all starts with the money mindset. It all starts with that question, and you asking that question for yourself. Is money serving you, or are you serving your money? And so that's kind of where I'm going to wrap it up. I know today's episode is going to be a little bit shorter one, because I want to dive more into that mindset at a little later date and have more concrete details about what you can be doing and how you can be saving your money and where you can be investing your money that's going to give you the greatest return. Because, as you grow, and I think that that's what's just really cool, is as I've grown up, instead of wanting the labels and things like that, what I really cherish are the experiences with my children. And yes, it takes money, especially with 5 kids, to be able to do that. So I love, taking them for spring break, when we went skiing, and I love taking them to go do different things. We're going to the beach, this year, and I'm super excited about that. And so just having that uninterrupted time, especially as they become teenagers and, they have their own lives. And, parents out there, I know you can relate to me in this, where when they were little, you're with them all the time, and you many times were like, I need time to miss you. And then you go through this midsection where then you start transitioning, and they start transitioning into their own lives. And used to be you were their source of entertainment, and you had to go play camp counselor. And then all of a sudden they had their own schedules once they started getting involved in all of these different activities. And then you were a slave to their schedule, and you're running them, around to, trying to figure out how to get them everywhere. And now, as being teenagers, all I want is just uninterrupted time with them, just where we all can just forget our schedules and leave our schedules behind and just enjoy each other and share just kind of these moments of little teaching, taking a road trip in the car. It's just my absolute favorite thing to be sitting in the car with all of my kids. And I'm super excited because we're renting this big old van. And it takes me back, because I used to have one of those giant conversion vans, 11 passenger, when they were all little, because I couldn't fit enough car seats. All those car seats were those big giant car seats, And so we couldn't fit in anything except for one of those. And so I'm going to have a little bit of a throwback moment. I think it's going to be a little nostalgic for all of us. We've already talked about it, for us to be driving out there, but that uninterrupted time. And it's true that it takes money to do that. And so every day I'm faced, with all these challenges involving work, and I've had so many moments. And my poor mother, she's had to sit with me drinking margaritas from time to time, where I'm just like, Mom, how how am I going to do this? Like, this is so exhausting. I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't think I can do this anymore. And then I'll have these moments with my children where I get to just, sit on a beach and look out at the ocean with them, having these beautiful talks with them, and my ability to take off for a week and, have this amazing beach house and these types of things. Like, I'm like, gosh, it is nice. So I'm not going to deny the fact that money does have moments where it's really helpful, and I won't deny that. But I think that there is a certain level where, you have to just kind of tote the line and be very careful that you're not crossing over to where all of a sudden I'm over here going, oh no, I'm starting to get wrapped up into some of these other luxuries that, what am I giving up? It's a trade-off. Am I giving up now time with my kids on a regular basis so I can be at work longer so that I can have these things? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to not go down that road. And in order for me to kind of keep all that in check, I had to do just a deep dive in my own life. So if you have any questions about that, or if you want to comment about it, chat about it, like, I would love to hear about it, what your thoughts are on that. Did this help you think of, what you're doing in your life? I'd really like to know and hear back from you. Are you making different, changes in your life right now? How has your view of money from childhood affected your view of money now in your adult life? I want to hear about that too, because I think that this is such a great conversation starter. And it really can, all of us just living in America and experiencing this kind of like constant message that's being told to us. I think like it would be fascinating because so many people have also a different way of life. You hear people going and just living off of homesteads and homeschooling and all these things. And I respect people like that so much. And I've always just wished that I could be so unattached, so that I could go and experience that. But, I'm a work in progress, and I feel like, I'm not sure where God's calling me to evangelize, but this is where I've decided to start, because you can start from anywhere. And I think that these are just good thoughts to kind of constantly be reminded and have in your mind. So until next time, thank you so much for joining me on Bless Your Heart podcast, and I look forward to it. All right, I'll see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.